Welcome, Ashley Bad.
Hello.
How's it been going? How was your weekend?
It's been great, actually. I've been super busy, but, nothing to complain about. My birthday's this month, so
Nice.
yeah.
When's your birthday?
It's the 15th of February.
Perfect.
Yeah, day after Valentine's Day.
Yeah, so you get double gifts.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to just get into it right away, and if you could give the listeners kind of an idea of how your interest for burlesque and the fetish industry and how you discovered that passion and how you first got into it.
So I actually started out as a club goer in the gothic industrial fetish underground of New York City, going out to lots of parties and events. And during the time of MySpace and the social media boom, that's when I was exposed in high school to fetish models. And I knew it was something that I wanted to do since I was, 12, 13 years old. And once I was exposed to that, and I discovered this scene in New York City, because I was from New Jersey, and I would hop on the bus 15 minutes outside of New York City, and I went to all these different cool underground clubs, and I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of since I was a kid. And while going out to these events, I ended up meeting latex designers, and I tried to meet as many people as I possibly could because I wanted to model. And through some of this glamour modeling and latex modeling, I ended up working for a few designers. I worked for Latex Nemesis, I worked for Kirsten Lee, and I even did like a small stint with Baroness. And through that, primarily when I was working for Latex Nemesis, she was a really incredible, still is a really incredible latex hood designer. She would do hoods, BDSM gear, and latex clothing. And she taught me everything there is to know about latex clothing and how to make and design it. So while I was working for her, I learned a lot about putting together these costumes, and I thought to myself, this is the perfect way for me to create something for the stage. And I had been a really big fan of a lot of different burlesque artists at the time, especially ones that crossed over into fetish. And so by working with her, I created all these different outfits, and I worked with other designers, and I started to build this gigantic wardrobe. And through that, I started to develop shows. And I worked with my ex, and we came up with all these really great ideas for remixes, and we put it together and put it on the stage. And that's how my latex burlesque career began.
When you say a remix, I immediately think of music. So what do you mean a remix, like with burlesque?
We take, let's say, I did like a Lily Munster latex show, burlesque show, and we'd find tracks by Rob Zombie and mesh it together with like another electro act, and then throw some of our own beats on it and create, a 6 to 7 minute remix that was completely custom made. And it was awesome. It was like we created a whole new vibe, a whole new show from, playing around with music.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah. So that was my first experimentation with coming up with musical concepts and applying them to shows that I created. And not long after that, I ended up having a bad accident that happened on a set. I was doing a photo shoot, and I injured my knee pretty badly. And funny enough, the same thing happened to Betty Page during a BDSM latex shoot. You end up injuring your knee, and I had 2 surgeries on my left knee, and it left me in a really bad way, and I couldn't walk for several months. So I could not walk. I was on crutches. For a little while, I had my friends push me around in a wheelchair. And during that time, my ex was like, You know what? While you have all this time just sitting in one room, here's Ableton. Why don't you learn Ableton? Because you have such a gigantic interest in music. So I was confined to one bed, one room, and I started messing around with Ableton. And after that, I started working on Machine, and I started to develop my own beats and my own sounds, my own music. And that is, I would say, that was in 2013 was when I
Okay.
started developing my own music.
Nice. So it's been 10 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not really too deep into the scene. Like I've dated people in the past that were into it. I'm currently like I'm way out of the loop with, you know, burlesque and the bondage, fetish, BDSM stuff. So, what is it that drives you to continue to create and continue to put on the shows? Like in relation to kind of give us the description of that compared to like how you feel about music. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
what is that? What is that drive for you?
Are you asking what the drive is to do it within the BDSM and kink realm?
Yeah, like what, however you relate to that, like what is the main factor for you?
So for me, I would say I think my why I have such a strong connection to the fetish scene is my upbringing, which was my parents are not very religious, but I went to an all girls Catholic academy.
Okay.
Uh, most of my life. So that's kind of all that I knew. And there is a lot of repression in that kind of situation. So I think that the fetish scene was so open and so kind and experimental. And I wanted to not be a part of something that was so repressed like it was in school for me. And I wanted to be a part of something that was a lot larger and sexually open. And I wanted to have these new experiences. So I think that's the real root as to why I am so deeply connected in the fetish and kink scene. Um, and music was something that was always a part of me around that same time. And I find them to be so closely related that they tie into each other. And you'll see that even now with artists like Madonna, a lot of pop artists, they
Yeah.
combine, sexuality in their music. And I really wanted to express that. So the two just seem to go together so seamlessly.
Yeah.
And when I was doing burlesque, and this was just before I started to make my own music, I went to a voluptuous horror of Karen Black show, and it was at Webster Hall. And I want to say this is maybe the year before, so maybe it was 2011 or 2012. And I went to go see the voluptuous horror, and at the end of her show, she did this really amazing, over the top art show with the full band, the full punk rock glam band was playing. And to describe the voluptuous horror of Karen Black for people who don't know, Kembra Fowler is the lead singer, and all of the women are completely naked from head to toe, but they're fully body painted. So it doesn't feel like the women are naked. It feels more like you're looking at these creatures from another world, and there's a horror aspect to it where their teeth are blacked out, gigantic wigs that are 5 feet tall, and she's rocking out doing a full punk rock show with a full band. And I was so taken by it. I was like, this is something that I would love to be a part of. And at the end of the performance, she's just at the top of her lungs saying, if anyone would like to be a member of the voluptuous horror of Karen Black, if anyone would like to be a girl of Karen Black, come find me, come talk to me. And that's exactly what happened. I started asking everyone. I asked my partner who had known her, friends of hers, really. And I said, I want to do this. How do I find her? How do I become a girl of Karen Black? And that's exactly what happened. We found her. She happened to live, she lived like not far from where I lived, and a lot of people in the scene knew her. And then suddenly I became connected to her, and I went up to her and I asked her, I said, Kembra, can I be a girl of Karen Black? And she said, sure. And then all of a sudden I was invited to rehearsals, and I was doing art shows with her. And I actually learned so much from her. She has a theory called availabilism, and what it's about is making use of what's available to you, making use of what you have access to. So if you're a starving artist and you need an idea, you don't have access to it, you don't have money, you can go, all right, I need this idea. I don't have the money for it. So let's say, the can of water that I have sitting in front of me. So that's an idea right there. I'm going to use water as my subject. I'm going to take these cans, I'm going to collect cans, I'm going to build something out of it, and that's my idea. It could be the idea for a song, it could be the clothing that I'm going to put on my back, it can be a whole new concept of something that's just sitting right in front of you. And I was exactly that, a starving artist, and I just make use of whatever I had in front of me. And it was so inspiring to me. And to this day, I still do the same thing. I still go, I have an idea, I'm just going to use whatever the hell's in front of me. And from then on, working with Kembra was just like a constant source of inspiration. And everything about her is empowering to women. The future is female. She has a whole art movement that she's behind, and it's all about future feminism, which is everything about women being equals to men, and all about pushing women to be stronger, to move forward in life, and just to inspire women of all kinds. Even Andrew WK was a girl of Karen Black, which was so cool. So anyone could be a girl of Karen Black. It was pretty awesome that man, woman, non-binary, trans, doesn't matter. Everyone's a part of the same community.
Was that before he got pretty huge, or was it like during
It was
his
actually
time?
during.
Really?
It was during. And I think he does a house tour on YouTube. And he actually has, I think, a pair of boots and a Karen Black, Voluptuous Horror and Karen Black doll. Kemper makes these all by hand, and he talks about, like, he did a little stint with her, and that was just before I joined Kembra.
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So is that something like he just did, like for the passion of it? Like he didn't announce it, he just did it, or did people find out? Or because I mean, it's not like I followed him like religiously, but I did.
Yeah.
Like I remember when like his hit singles came out, and like checked out all the videos, and like he was in the news and stuff, and like the metal press and all that, but I had no idea about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was announced exactly, but I know it ended up being in the press, and there's photos of him online dressed as a girl of Karen Black, and I know he's a big fan of hers, so it popped up just before I joined working with Kembra, and I thought that was just so awesome. I was like, anyone can do it. It's awesome.
So what was it like performing at those shows? Like, and how long were you a part of it?
So it was pretty ongoing. I would do a lot of New York shows during that time period. So I want to say something like 2012 until 2019. I was doing it just up until the pandemic before I made the move to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I will still do it. If she's in LA, I will probably still be doing shows with Kembra when she's here.
Nice.
Yeah. And she actually was the first person to tell me to start a band. She's like, Ashley, she's like, you should do it. It's easy. And I'm thinking in my head, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And she's like, Ashley, it's easy. You know what you should do? You should start a band.
That's a perfect segue into
Yeah.
like your music. So when you decided to, like you said, you learned Ableton, so you had started creating beats and all that.
Yeah.
So when did the idea for the solo project pop into your head, and like for the idea for the music videos and all that, and how did the collaboration with Cleopatra happen?
So, when I first started making beats, I didn't think anyone would take me that seriously, being a woman and being in a kind of sexually charged scene. I just thought, okay, I'm going to make these beats, and I will probably sing on them, and I will apply them to my latex shows. And I'll apply them to like burlesque shows. And I thought that in itself would be big enough because at least with these shows, I am traveling. I would do things like Smack in New York City. I would do, Torture Garden. I would do Dark Side of the Con and all these big events, which I was so lucky to be booked for. And I didn't think that far ahead because I just didn't think that anyone would be interested. Then I met my partner, Mark Gemini Thwaite, and I ended up going to London with him and meeting Lords of Acid. Praga Khan and his wife were interested in having me do burlesque for their tour. And I thought, okay, that's going to be awesome. Like, I'd love to do that. That also meshes my two loves, which is latex, kink, burlesque, and music. And then the pandemic happened. Literally the first day of rehearsal, everything shut down, and I came to LA with 2 suitcases, and I was like, I guess I'm living here now. My family said, stay here, stay in LA, because New York City is really, really bad. Lots of people were dying, and there was no opportunity for me to go home anytime soon. But I was in a safe place with safe people, and during that time, I ended up showing Mark my demos. And he thought they were great, and we ended up working on them throughout the entire pandemic. So all the ideas that I had started to really blossom and expand. And I had a really big love for film noir, retro futurism, Blade Runner, Maltese Falcon, just in general, lots of film noir. I loved Neo Noir. So I wanted to incorporate all of my interests into the music. And Mark was nice enough to produce and add guitar to a lot of my music. And from there, I self put out my first single, Deadly. And we were just asking friends, what do you think about this new track? And we got a lot of really positive responses, especially to a lot of my DJ friends in New York City. And they thought that Deadly was a really good dance floor hit. And just through a friend, we sent Deadly in to a friend of a friend, and suddenly Cleopatra found out about it and said, this is awesome. We would like to put this out.
Nice.
Yeah.
You have 3 singles and videos, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So for this year, are you planning on writing a full album and doing more videos? Or are you kind of just letting the 3 videos simmer for a bit?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of working on a full album right now. I also have a really cool KMFDM cover that's sitting on the back burner right now. I was asked to contribute to a KMFDM compilation of covers, so I have that sitting on the back burner. And yeah, I'm just finishing off this album and hope I'm going to get it out this year.
Awesome. And also, what else show-wise do you have coming up that we can talk about? You have some stuff this month, a lot of stuff going on. So can you tell us about those shows?
Yeah, I have. It's pretty jam-packed. I just did Nightmare Market at Monarch Studios. I have Love and Lust at the Virgil coming up, which is kind of like a kink and electro blended party. I have the Endless Night Vampire Ball. I've got the biggest thing that's going on is I'm doing Transgressive, which is a part of RuPaul's Drag Race. It's a lot of their stars from the most recent season, and it's a celebration of all of these queens who have now transitioned from male to female. And I'm really big into supporting women's rights, trans rights, and I'm really excited for that.
Nice.
Yeah, so it'd be a combination of pop, dance icons, and I'm going to be throwing in a lot of like niche and underground alternative and goth hits as well. So that's going to be really fun to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast with Dita Von Teese like about a week ago, and she was talking about some of her past struggles with like being in the burlesque and fetish scene in that industry, and her struggles with that and certain types of relationships she's been in the past. And she was saying how, I was wondering if you could relate to this or give your thoughts on this. But she was saying how, you know, after a show, like a really long show, like just being, you know, great performance, getting home, like being super tired. And then she would talk about how she was in a relationship with a person that she was like, okay, I'm done for the day. I'm too tired. But he wanted his show, if you know what I mean. And she was talking about how, look, it's just a stage persona. It's not like who I really am all the time. So I was wondering, like, how do you relate to that? Is your stage persona like 100% who you are, or is some of it an act or a character, or is that who you really are?
Yeah, I do. I don't like to keep, my stage persona and who I am that separate. I try to have as much of myself in my acts and in my music as possible. So the one thing I can relate with her where, I have told many of my partners that yes, some of it is an act. I'd say it's an exaggeration of who I am. It's a slightly more extreme version of myself. But I don't find that there is as much of a separation as there might be for certain performers. I really want to put as much of myself in the act as possible. So the one issue that does pop up is, I'm sure Dita completely relates to this as any performer, especially for a lot of like glamour girls like myself. It takes a long time to get ready. It can take 2 hours, 3 hours to do hair, makeup, the crazy costume. It takes so much time that it can be very exhausting. So your partner may expect you to be that on and that put together when the show is over.
Yeah.
And that's just not reality.
Right. Yeah. That's what I always figured too.
Yeah.
And it's like, it takes a long time to get ready. And then also, like, once you're finally done with the show, you get back home, you get in your tour bus, dressing room, whatever. You also have to take everything off, which takes time too. So it's like by the time you're ready to wind down and it's like time for bed, you're just done. So I totally I totally get that. A lot of people might have the wrong impression. Like, yeah, it just also depends on the person, I guess. But that's just it's an act. It's a show, and it's not. That doesn't mean that's who that person is all the time.
Right. I aspire to be that all the time, but the upkeep is really hard. It's just, it's a lot of work to do all the time.
Yeah.
And, we should all be able to breathe and truly be ourselves around our partners. So, there are some people that they expect that all the time. It's just not real, though.
Oh, yeah. And I really like when, for someone, for example, like I mentioned Dita Von Teese before, but she's so, she's so particular about her looks and her stage performance, and every little detail matters and is calculated. But she's also she's cool with just being seen out in public, like, with sweats and, lipstick on and no makeup and going to the store, and she doesn't care. Like, because I know a lot of people that they're very done up all the time, and they never show like who they truly are to anybody, and especially like some of their significant others. Like, I've had a few friends that I still to this day I don't know. I've never seen their actual face. Like, I don't know what you really look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's a little extreme, but I get it. Like, everyone, do you, if that's your thing, that's totally cool. I get it. But I think there's something to say about, and I like when artists and performers, they have their get up, and then they also are very comfortable with who they are naturally, and they're not afraid to show that either.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's all about security at the end of the day. And when I was very young, I used to be, makeup and hair all day, all night, and I didn't want anyone to see me. And as I've gotten a bit older, I realized, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Your friends can see you, all done up and still appreciate you when you're not. It's all about your comfort level. And I don't judge anyone who does do it 24/7. If anything, I'm like, wow, you're awesome because you can keep that up for so long. So I'm open to both. I'm understanding of both. And like I said, it's all about your comfort level. I'm someone who is, at this point in my life, comfortable with both. Yeah.
Going back to music for a second, what are some of your biggest influences musically that have kind of helped you shape your style?
Well, Madonna is a really, really big one, and I was so excited to do a cover of Madonna's Erotica, and the sex book and the whole sex era of Madonna was a really, really huge influence on me, even when I was a young girl. And I would say that Madonna is such a huge part of my look, that era in her musical career, how it defines my look and even my film noir interests. That's like a really, really big part of who I am. And working on Erotica with Mark was like a dream because Mark had done a remix of his own of Justify My Love. And when I heard that and I heard the kind of Nine Inch Nails influence on that remix, I knew that I wanted to do Erotica with him. And he was the one that recommended that we do something that had more of a melodic feel to it, that had more singing and more vocalizations of it. And so that's how we both agreed on doing Erotica together. And Nine Inch Nails is actually a really big influence of mine as well. So the combination of that is what birthed Erotica.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you can kind of hear that industrial, even a tinge of the Susie Sue, The Cure kind of guitar vibe to it, but we still have these kind of like industrial beats underneath. Yeah, so that's two of my really, really major influences in music. I was really, really a big fan of industrial music and actually a lot of heavy music growing up. And I got into goth a bit later. I want to say in my college years, I started to get into Bauhaus and Susie and The Cure. So all of that stuff happened later. But before that, I was really into industrial rock.
Do you like metal?
I do.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a big metalhead as well.
What kind of metal bands do you like?
Oh man, I'm kind of everywhere. I was actually a really big black metal fan, so I loved Behemoth and Dimmu Borgir and all of these extreme metal bands. And I'd get a lot of looks for it because I was just this Catholic schoolgirl that was into this really extreme metal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally like my world. So I like Demu is a big influence as well. So Behemoth too. So
Yeah,
I love all that stuff.
The dressing up also and the theatrical element was, I'm all about the theatrics, though in a more glamorous, subdued way. But when I look at them, I'm like, it's almost a form of drag. To me, those are glamorous men. So I wanted to be a very glamorous, dark woman.
Yeah, and I mean the black metal and death metal wardrobe and the aesthetics they can almost blend together into bondage and fetish stuff as well. It's very similar. It's like you can easily combine the two to create something that's both genres. So
exactly.
Yeah, the aesthetics are one of my favorite. Like black metal, like stuff like Cradle of Filth, Dimmu Borgir, Behemoth. They've evolved their wardrobe over time, and it's become more and more refined and more detailed. So yeah, I think there's a lot. It's very relatable to latex and all the bondage and BDSM stuff. So also, if you could give advice to anyone like wanting to get into the scene, like into the latex and burlesque, all that stuff, what kind of advice would you want to give?
The advice that I would give is don't be afraid to explore and ask questions. So I think the best way to dip your toe into fetish would be to go out to an event. And I know that the events can be a little bit difficult to find for someone who's just starting out, but thankfully, social media has made it so much easier for you to find your clan, your group. So the first thing that I would do is find an event, talk to people, be kind, ask a lot of questions, as I've said already, because people who are in the bondage, BDSM, and the gothic adjacent events are all very, very kind, because we've all gone through the same things in our life where we've all felt like outcasts, and a lot of us don't know how to find our way. And it's such a great feeling to find people who are like you and who are accepting of you, who will never look at you like there's something wrong with you, or that your sexual interest is a negative part of who you are. And that was my favorite thing about finding myself in the fetish scene, because there was all these people who were like, you're cool. What you like is cool. I like that too. Or even if they have a different kink or a different taste in music, they never look at you like there's something wrong with you.
Right. Yeah.
So if you go out and you take the time to explore and find these people, which is, like I said, very easy to find people who are like you, that's where I would get started. And you don't need a wardrobe or anything like that. You just go out and be yourself, and maybe choose some simple black clothing, something neutral to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the first thing, is just getting yourself out there, and you'll make friends very easily. Yeah.
I've also found too, the years I've been in the music industry and involved in the rock and metal scene, I feel like there's a lot of discrimination. It just gets a bad rap because of the way people dress, right? And the mainstream, or like the general population, like look at, goths or metalheads, and they'll kind of just immediately think negatively of them. And it's funny because almost every single metalhead or rock or goth person I know is so much nicer than the majority of normal people I run into day to day. So it's just what you said about like people I know that are into the kink, into the fetish, into the latex scene. They're all like so nice, and it's still really sad that people kind of look at the genre of that kind of a lifestyle in a negative way, like generally, which I don't agree with, but it's just unfortunately like still kind of the norm. So it is upsetting, but I think people should just have more of an open mind, because like you said, I mean, everyone is so nice and so like gentle and kind and accepting.
Yeah, and they're also the kindest to women, people of color, anyone who's a part of the LGBTQ community. It's so funny that all of us have found so much warmth and kindness in the darkness versus people who, the mainstream scene and the average person. It's interesting, isn't it? How people who are drawn to darkness tend to be the more kinder and more accepting of who you are as a person. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just from my personal experience, I mean, with relationships, like I've dated quite a variety of different kinds of people from different cultural backgrounds, different styles, different career paths. And like the ones that have been the most difficult are from the people like I would have never expected, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of the alternative and, people that are into more of what I'm into, there have been a lot easier to be in a relationship with. So when I did try to step outside of that to like try something new, as they would say, like absolutely created the worst like tension. And sometimes the most normal seeming people are the ones that are like absolutely awful.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, like having to say that. I mean, like they seem like normal and conservative and whatever on the outside, but they have so much hate and like discrimination. Like the longer the longer I got into the relationships and the more I got to learn about them, it was just like, wow. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because these types of people are usually brought up in situations where they aren't allowed to be free. They're not allowed to be themselves. And there can be a lot of internal turmoil. And, when someone is so repressed, sometimes they turn that into hatred and they take it out on other people. But in a scene full of everyone who is quote unquote considered a freak, everyone's like on the same playing field and everyone's like, here I am. And, they are who they are unapologetically. And there's no repression because you're here to be accepted. Yeah. So it's really interesting. Like, I was in a relationship back in high school with a metalhead kid whose parents were fundamentalist Christians, fundamentalists, evangelists. And they were so hardcore about it and he was actually a Southern gentleman, a super sweet person. I mean, the most loveliest person that you could ever imagine. And yet the family was so unforgiving of just his musical interests that if he wore black and wanted to live in his parents' house, he had to burn all of his CDs, outfits in a bonfire in their backyard to be able to live in his own house. So it can be pretty extreme, So, yeah.
I wish people would be more accepting, but that's just how the world is. It's like, I think the best you can do is just be who you are and, try your best to be the best person you can and love everybody. And I think that's really what the scene is. It's embraced, like you said, it embraces love and acceptance. And
there's issues inside the scene as well. There's always a few bad eggs, but for the most part, it looks like it's something that's always talked about. So if someone is not so nice to other people, it usually comes out pretty quickly, and there's a lot of tolerance in this scene and a lot of acceptance, I would say. So I like that it's something that's usually talked about and dealt with most of the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Anything you would like to plug before we wrap it up? You want to maybe talk about your shows one more time so people can check it out and get tickets?
Sure, yeah. If you guys just head over to ashleybad.com, you can check out my next DJ dates. I will be DJing in multiple places in Los Angeles this month. I'll be DJing at Heart in West Hollywood for Transgressive. I'm going to be DJing at Love and Lust at the Virgil. I'm going to be DJing at the Endless Night Vampire Ball. I'm sure there's a few dates that I'm missing right now. But you can follow all of my social media, Miss Ashley Bad on Instagram. But primarily, ashleybad.com is where you can find everything that you need. And check out my music on Spotify. I have 3 singles out: Deadly, Erotica, and The Gun. And they're all out right now on all music platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming by. And looking forward to the rest of 23, see what you do with music and the new album. So
awesome.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much.